Hi, everyone, and welcome to the Apartment Department. My name is Ann Baum. With me, as always, is Chris Johnson. Today, we are so excited because we are joined by an industry legend. As Chris mentioned before we started, this is one of his idols and heroes. No pressure. Izzy Carunungan from LCP. He is the industry principal at LCP. LCP, by the way, stands for Lights, Camera, Pixels. And LCP is a company that makes it easy for communities to create individual photos, 3D tours of units as well as amenity spaces. And we know that that's becoming so important right now in the industry. Everyone's talking about how do you make your websites a central hub for information for the renter? How do you cater to people who want to rent sight unseen? How do you establish consistency across different upgrade packages, finishes, all of the things that we know happen over time at properties. And so LCP is solving a real world challenge that we're all facing right now from a marketing standpoint. So Izzy, thank you so much for being here. We're so excited.
Thank you for having me. I am really excited to get the invitation. Speak about visual media, and just a little bit about me. I've been in the industry for quite a bit now. Majority of my experience in multifamily has really been on the property management side. I started my career at Bozzuto, and then spent a significant time of my career at Graystar. And then I moved over to the supplier side with LCP Media. And in a lot of ways, it's I know I know people say, "Oh, I'm living the dream," or I have the perfect job, and I can honestly say, in most days that's the case because my two passions in life, you know, obviously outside of my family or in addition to my family, are two things, marketing and photography. And with my position at LCP, I'm able to marry the two, right? And then you put travel on top of that. It really makes it amazing for me because I always bring my camera with me, and I with photographers, you tend to like wake up early because you want to catch the sunrise, and so that's what I do. And when I travel and I attend these conferences or visit clients, it's just making sure I have my camera with me so I can capture this beautiful locations, and that's just my job, and so I'm really, really excited for what is happening in multifamily today and what's going to happen to multifamily in the future for a lot of us that have seen a lot of shift happening over the years, right? There's many shifts that happened over the years in how we're marketing multifamily communities and apartments, and this is such an exciting time, you know, for it.
No, I agree with you. So first of all, we did not know that you were a secret, photography influencer. So that's good. Legend, influencer, the list goes on. Tell us a little bit more. I mean, this is like a very broad question, but why unit level media? Like why is this becoming a game changer for properties when they're using it?
For sure, for many many years, our industry, we've really been marketing the community. It's when you go through the renter journey, right? Top of the funnel, people are searching for, location, close to their work, or they start the search that way, and then they ended up, visiting these property websites, right? And then they kind of go down the funnel. And for many, many years, the search basically stops at the floor plan level at best, right? Where they can see, you know, floor plan type A1, one bedroom, one bath. And it kind of really just stops there. But now the availability of, unit level content, and when I say unit level content, I'm speaking about the actual, apartment, the actual unit, unit 101, unit 503, right? The specific apartments, because as we all know, we will have multiple units within a floor plan type, right? You may have, 10 units to, floor plan type A1, one bedroom, one bath, but these units could be in different floors. They'll have different views. Some of them may have different finishes.
Yep.
Some may be renovated, some may not be renovated, but they have the same floor plan layout. They're the same floor plan type. But if you're able to show, prospective residents on, these actual units, um, not just the unit type or the floor plan type, you're really pushing them down further down the funnel, right? And what's really happening is, these prospects become more educated about, you know, can I see myself living in this exact apartment? You know, not the floor plan type, but this exact apartment with this view, with this finishes, with and so in a lot of ways they're pre-qualifying themselves, right? Because what's the next step after that? They're going to make contact with a property, right? They're going to make that phone call. They're going to fill out that form. Eventually, they will visit that property, right? But making them educated about, what are the actual units, what are the actual apartments that they are interested in showing, interested in seeing when they actually get to the property, right? And inversely, I always talk about this. What are the units that they don't want to see when they get to the property? Because I think that's equally as important, right? Because from a leasing agent perspective, your typical tour is what, 45, 30, 45 minutes on average, maybe, right? And you're showing them this model unit or this, this unit, but they may not necessarily even want that because they've already did their research, prior to even getting there. So it, from a leasing agent perspective, it makes the in-person tour more efficient, you know.
Yeah.
And
I like
and really that's why we're seeing these higher conversions with properties that are showing unit level content, whether it's virtual tours or still photographs, videos, uh, because they are putting the prospects inside that actual apartment, not just conceptually of a floor plan type.
I love it. It's a good idea. I just can I ask one quick question, Ann? I know you have some follow up here, and I want to get the numbers. Of course, you talked about conversion, and of course, we care here at the apartment department about data every time, right? But
yes.
where so my brain is now spinning on how I can do this. And if you've listened to the pod, I love video, and we're doing some really fun stuff with video at my current shop. How early in the process of marketing the community are you seeing success with marketing unit? So I know Ann has been a big proponent of this unit marketing versus property marketing or floor plan marketing. Have you seen anybody actually put their toe in and test this to how far up the funnel you can actually get the unit in front of somebody and get interest?
Absolutely. So one of the things, so with LCP, we have our virtual tour platform is called Tour Builder, right? And we have two types of virtual tours. One is what we call Tour Builder Pro, which is, property virtual tour. So you're really talking about the exterior, the amenities, the common spaces, even model units, right? Um, but we went to market a couple of years ago with a product called Tour Builder Go. And that's really designed to capture unit level content, right? You use a 360 camera. It's super easy to use and it's synced to an app that we built, right? And and so what I wanted to do from a marketing perspective is really quantify, what's happening when you have this, when you capture this unit level content, right? So what we did was we partnered with a major management company on a lease property they have in Austin, Texas, right? And we said, hey, we're gonna go out there and shoot every single unit, 311 units on this lease property. Okay, so tons of vacancies, right? Um, and then then we told them, I said, would love for us to compare that property with unit level tours, shot for every single unit, compared to another similar property in the same submarket in Austin that do not have unit level tours, and let's see what the difference is, right? And so we did. So we went out there, we shot every single unit. It's a new construction property, going into pre-lease, going into lease up, and so it was a perfect time to capture those units because everything's vacant, right? And this is what we tell our clients as well. It's like, if you have a lease up, especially if it's new construction lease up property, that would be the best time to shoot these units because while they're still vacant, right? Not that you can't do it in stabilized properties. You can, obviously, right? But you have to wait for the turn, right? So it may take, depending on your renewals, it may take a couple years to have a digital inventory of all your units, waiting for the turn. But lease ups would be perfect because now you'll have a digital inventory of every single unit that you can use to market as you go through this lease up and beyond, right? Okay. So let me just talk about the case study real quick because even I was amazed with the results. I completely did not expect this, right? So from a lead gen standpoint, the property that had the unit level tours for every single unit versus compared to the property that did not have it, generated 40% more leads, generated 80% more applications, 72% more leases, and then a 38% higher lead to lease conversion, right? Now, I know that the leads, application leases, those are big numbers. But to me, the 38% higher lead to lease conversion, I think is huge, right? And again, it quantifies what, we have been thinking when we went to market with this product, right? Which is we're going to try to pre-qualify this prospect by pushing them further down the leasing funnel, make them more educated. So which is what I was talking about earlier, so that when they transact with a property, they have a fairly good idea of what units they want to live in or they want to see, right? And that there lies that conversion piece, right? It's in a lot of ways, you're eliminating the guessing game, right? Where they would go to the property, the leasing agent will do the show and pony tour. I'm going to show you this, I'm going to show you that. But here it's more targeted. By the time they make that transaction, by the time they step foot in that property, they're way further down the funnel than they normally would. So I love this case study. I love talking about this case study because, in a lot of ways, the industry is still shifting towards this unit level content. And, we at LCP, we're really trying to preach, the value of this unit level content to the multifamily industry in general, because we know it works and we know the impact it has in leasing apartments, right?
No, I think that's interesting. I mean, I recently found out 40-year-old property, so been through many renovations, lots of floor plans, unit, all the things. Well, anyway, I found out it was taking sometimes 2 hours to do a tour because it was like, well, I want to see the one that's renovated, that's on the second floor, you get the idea. And so the idea of the unit level media is also what you're talking about. Not only are prospects qualifying themselves, but I think the leasing team can also use the unit level media to pre-qualify the tour in terms of like, this is what you've told us you're interested in. I'm going to send you 3 units we have available. Here are the 3D tours of each. Write back and tell me which ones you don't like or which ones you like or whatever the case. So I think not only from a kind of a website experience or like standpoint, but I think also integrating the media into the leasing process would allow us to see, an improvement in maybe where some leasing funnel metrics might be breaking or lower than a benchmark. And now a message from our sponsor, Flamingo. Every multifamily marketer wants to know what the next big thing will be. At the apartment department, we think that resident retention is the next big thing, which is why we're excited to have Flamingo as our podcast sponsor. Flamingo, founded by Jude Chai, is an all-in-one resident retention platform used by some of the top-performing communities in the country. And here's a fun little secret. If you see a community with 300 plus online reviews and 65% plus retention, there's a good chance they're using Flamingo. From automated renewal management and resident events to amenity bookings and even an AI concierge, Flamingo brings everything together in one sleek app that residents actually use. Learn more at getflamingo.com.
And here's another story I want to share with both of you too, because this was interesting to me because when we were going to market, we were positioning, or at least I as the marketing guy was positioning this product as a pre-visit tool, right? So this is, again, going down the funnel, but it's before you visit the property, right? Making the prospects more educated, before they visit the property. It's a so the way I position it is, this is going to be a great pre-visit, marketing tool for you, right? Okay. So my CTO, his name's Tom Chomiak. He's the brains behind Tour Builder. He built Tour Builder from scratch, right? He was moving from Chicago to Naples, Florida. Okay. So he went down there, checking out some apartments, right? And so he was by himself. He didn't bring his wife. And he was visiting multiple properties, like what a normal prospect would do, right? You would visit multiple properties, and guess what? You will visit multiple units within that property, right? So you do the math, right? You visit 5 units in a property, and you visit 5 properties. That's 25 units. Okay, right? Easy, right?
It's a long day.
So he's like, I go back to Chicago. I was telling my wife all of these things that I visited, right? And they're all like literally blending together.
Yeah.
Right. And then I'm like, Tom, we can also position this unit level content for post visit, right? As a follow-up tool, and that's how we created. So we have short form videos available now for every single virtual tour, right? So not just the virtual tour itself, which is interactive and you control the experience. But what we were able to do is create the short form video, 30, 45 seconds videos of the virtual tour, right? And I said, we can tell the leasing agent to include these short form videos as part of their follow-up, right? Instead of like just your typical, text follow-up, or, sometimes you'll maybe attach a floor plan, maybe, right? But now you can actually see, hey, Tom, here's the units that you visited, right? And then I'm like, that would help with conversion too. Not just as a pre-visit tool, but as a post-visit follow-up tool. And now not only you're standing out with the 4 other properties that you visited, that the prospect visited, that do not have this tool, right? But from a prospect perspective, I'm like, yeah, I'm going to show my wife, here's all the units that I visited. I can't remember the 20 other units that I visited with the 4 other properties that I visited. Right. But for this one, I can show it to you, right? And so now we talk about that. Tell that story all the time now because, while we initially positioned this as a pre-visit marketing tool, now we're also positioning it as a post-visit follow-up tool that helps increase with your closing and your conversion.
Well, our renters are more sophisticated anyway. So when they come to the property, they know what they're getting into. And don't you just think that it plays to the customer service piece, that we care that you're coming, here are the units that you're interested in. Okay, maybe those didn't work, but here's what we looked at, and this is what you ended up being interested in. And it kind of ties the nice little bow on top of the package to get that closing, if they're comparing you to 2 or 3 other communities, which they probably are.
Absolutely. And again, this is what the case study was referring to, right? You have unit level content on one property and you don't have unit level content on the other property, right? And so that's why I think we're seeing these results that we saw in the case study, right? Because one, this property that has unit level tours, not only they're able to market the units themselves, not just in the initial pre-lease or lease up phase, but on an ongoing basis, right? If you have a digital media inventory of every single unit, once that unit doesn't get renewed, you can start marketing it as early as you can, right? You don't have to wait. You don't have to wait until you get that they're not going to renew that unit. As long as you have that digital inventory, you can start marketing it, right? So I think there's just a lot of value in developing this this unit level content, and with LCP, what we really been really working hard on is just making that capture process as easy as possible, right? Making that capture process easy as possible, because as you both know, you've been around in industry too. Sometimes a barrier to entry in our industry is kind of like fear of technology, right? Or fear of something new, right? And you'll always gonna hear like, oh, we don't have the bandwidth, or our team can't do it, or you know and all these other kind of things that won't allow them to capture the content, right? And so, what we're really doing is, okay, we'll have a photographer option. We could send a photographer out there. It's going to cost you a little bit more because, we're paying the photographer. But really the most cost efficient, option is to do a self-capture, right? Whether the leasing team is doing the self-capture, or in some cases, in fact, when we were piloting this product, we piloted on 12 properties, and there was one property that stood out because they were churning this tour so quickly, and a lot of them, right? And so I called up the marketing person for that property. I'm like, hey, what are you guys doing? I mean, because this is exactly what we've kind of been wanting to do. It's like, here's the kit. We'll train you how to do it. The app is super easy to use, right? It syncs together once you capture the content. But this one property is they're just knocking it out really quick, right? And so what the marketing person told me, and I always share too when I talk to folks about this, is they trained their maintenance folks, not just the leasing team, but they trained their maintenance folks, which I thought was brilliant, because why? If they're doing it on the turn, obviously the maintenance folks are involved in that, right? But they added it as the last item in the punch list. Okay. So once maintenance does all the things that they do in turning that property, well, the last step is capture it.
Yeah.
Capture what it looks like. One, the unit's going to be in its best shape before you lease it again, right? And two, it just makes complete sense that the maintenance team is doing it. Now, it's not, it's a new skill set for them, right? I don't know how often maintenance folks, capture content like this, because we do it for marketing purposes, right? But the when I talk to the marketing person, they're like, oh my God, our maintenance folks love it, because one, they learned a new skill set, and two, they're showing off their work, with a turn. And so I'm like, that's great, because it's a win-win. Now you have this content. Now you've captured it, right? And then now you don't have to worry about that unless you're doing some type of renovation in that unit, right? That's it. You've captured it. You move on to whatever the next one is, right? And so I think there's some education that we need to do in terms of don't be scared of like technology. We're gonna make it as easy as possible, right? And we're gonna make the process as simple as possible, so that so there's not a heavy lift on the on-site folks.
Yeah.
That's brilliant, though. You left out one other important piece. If they're capturing the video, then they got to make sure it's clean. It's got to look good, that they actually punched what they were supposed to punch, because they're taking video of it. It's going to be pretty clear if they didn't, which is an also added nice little like bow to the vacant unit that they just finished.
Exactly. Yeah. Again, some folks are just being creative and thinking outside the box, and for me, it's a great learning experience. And just like you said, initially I positioned this as a pre-visit, marketing tool. Turns out it also works for post visit. We were training the leasing team to do the capture. Well, somebody thought like, oh, I'm gonna train my maintenance folks, and that worked out. You know, so it's evolving. Is I guess what I'm trying to say.
I think we use your product at two different of our properties. One's a lease up and one's a stabilized property, and it's been interesting for me to see how it's handled differently. One property decided to train their entire team how to use it, so we all went out together and did some tours and made some jokes, and it was fun. We had a good time. And then the other property has designated one particular person for that to be their job. So I think that's um it might end up depending on, like, we've seen that it kind of depends on the property and staff and capabilities and all the things, but it's been really cool to see the tours start to go up on our websites, the tours and the photos, because I do believe that it's kind of the future. And it's interesting too, like at OpTech, apartments.com, for example, had a session about the future of the renter. I don't remember what it was called, but one of the things they talked about was that renters now expect and appreciate unit level photos. So like it's quickly becoming almost a standard
Yep.
that we need to adopt to, because renters, for all of the reasons that we talked about previously, moving from out of state, being more savvy, having more information at their fingertips, doing more research ahead of time. I mean, it's becoming even more necessary. So I thought that was interesting too. Like, it's not just us as marketers saying like this is important, but we're saying it's important because renters are telling us it's important. And obviously your case studies are showing that too. So that really stuck out to me. I was like, oh, it's here now.
Yeah.
The renters are telling us.
And that's really what's really driving a lot of his innovation, I feel like, right? So like I said, there's been many shifts in consumer behavior, even I would say the last few years, right?
Yeah.
We've all been through the COVID years, right? Interesting time in our history, right? Okay. If you remember, we've all been there. All the properties shut down during COVID. Meaning nobody can visit the property. It's just impossible, right? There's all these restrictions. But guess what happened? Virtual tours or, virtual content became a must. It's no longer like, oh, it's a nice to have, right? It became a must have because why? When when prospects can physically visit the property and they still need a home to move to, guess what they're going to do is they're going to go online, they're going to visit your website, they're going to visit, the ILSs, whatever marketing channels they're visiting.
Mm-hmm.
And if they're not seeing this type of content there, then they're going to move on to the ones that will show them, right? And that is a big, big, big consumer behavior shift that happened during COVID, right? Because I remember, pre-COVID, virtual tours are, oh, it's a nice to have, right? We'll get to it when we get to it, right? And then all of a sudden, nobody can visit the properties and everybody's scrambling to have virtual tours, okay? Or really just high quality visual media in general, right? Because that's really the only way they can lease apartments during COVID. Well, guess what? Post COVID, that consumer behavior never changed back. Consumers never said, no, oh, no, we can visit the property now. I'm no longer gonna do my research online. I'm not gonna do the walkthrough online. I'm just gonna go visit. No. People now expect this.
Yeah.
Prospect now expect that when I go to your website, when I go to your listing, that I should be able to see this type of content, right? That is the expectation. That's the expectation now. And I think that's critical for our industry, right? Because like I said before, at best you can probably stop at the floor plan level. Now, if you have unit level content, you're now taking them inside these units. Again, pre-visit and then as a follow-up, post-visit.
Visit. Something else too that's interesting, and we've been doing a lot to understand what AI search tools, ChatGPT, Claude, Gemini know about our properties, and we've been using that as a way to basically do AI search preparedness. Like, what does AI know about our property at this moment, so we can go back, make sure we have a solid customer experience plan in place, brand experience, SEO plan in place. But something that I've seen surface, we have this prompt that's basically like, tell us what's known about the property, tell us what people like, tell us what the hesitations might be. And some of the hesitations that surface are specifically around unit level finishes, that there are reviews about inconsistent unit level finishes, for example. And so that's just, to me, another reason to start embracing this unit level photography and 3D tours. It's because we're now preparing for AI search, where those inconsistencies, if they exist, are being surfaced. And that to me is just, I don't know, everyone's so worried. And it's like, yeah, those things are already known about your property if it exists. So how do you combat that? You talk about it, you say, yes, all of our, I mean, there are easy things. You can split floor plans into, renovated versus basic or classic or whatever you want to call them. But like, and you can kind of talk about, we have varying levels of finish and all that. But I think the real way is then to address it from a visual standpoint, so people can verify, because when someone sees something like that, it's not necessarily going to turn them away from the property. They might want to go and learn more and understand, what does that exactly mean. So if someone read that on a quad and then went to your website and saw, oh, it just means that literally all of their units are different, but I can see them, then that's going to overcome a hurdle that might have existed, because it was surfaced through what AI knew about your property. So
For sure. And then the one thing also I want to talk, that's actually a really good point, Anne, but Chris and I, the other thing I want to talk about too is, we're all marketers, right? We're all in marketing, and we kind of look at it from a marketing lens, right? Everything that we've just talked about, right? But there's also an operations, kind of really aspect to all of this, right? And because at the end of the day, we're all trying to lease apartments, right? You know, fill in those, vacants, right? So Greystar did a really good study on the value of virtual tours as it relates to um, NOI, right? And really, it's the first time I've seen um, somebody tie visual media content to revenue numbers, right? And really their hypothesis is, if you have virtual tours, visual, really strong visual media content, um, how much faster can you lease an apartment compared to a property that did not have this type of content, right? How much faster? Okay. So the answer, according to their case study, is 5 days. On average, they're leasing vacants 5 days faster because they have this type of content, right? Okay, what does that mean? Well, that's you take the whatever the daily revenue of that unit sitting vacant for 5 days. You multiply that's just massive, right? And it's all now it's huge, right? And so now we actually have quantifiable data to say, hey, this type of content, not only is generating more leads, it's generating more applications, more leases, higher lead to lease conversions, right? But we actually have data to say it also, leases apartments faster, 5 days, and whatever, and then you factor in your rents and divided by 30, 31, whatever the number is, and then you multiply it by how many vacants you have, and then at the end of that process, you're like, okay, now I can really quantify the investment in visual media content, virtual tours, especially unit level content, because now we know it impacts our bottom line, and so I think in my opinion, I think that's huge. um you know they've seen this higher rental revenue, they've seen faster leasing, The fact that their units are not, vacant longer than they should be. And now, in my mind, when we talk to our C-level folks, when we talk about budgets, when we talk to our operators, on why we need to invest in this type of content, because it impacts our bottom line at the end of the day.
That's pretty incredible though. If you take that across a portfolio, 5 days, all that money you're saving. Izzy, we like to say that we're a revenue department here. We're not an expense. We need to invest. And just think about your own buying habits. If you don't see a photo of something or it's not a good photo, and I don't care what you're buying, you're not going to buy it. It's going to be the same for your digital footprint.
Yes,
And
are
that's
you
lesson
our
learned for everybody
products?
listening out there. Like, go look at your websites. Like, is it easy to navigate? Do the photos look good? Even if you don't have all this media and you need somewhere to start somewhere, start slow. We talk about this all the time. You don't have to run. You could crawl. Start at one property, start at one unit and see how it goes.
Yep.
But just go do that check and go see what it looks like and be a prospect. Look on your phone, for God's sake. You know how many times I have to remind myself, go look on my phone, because that's how the prospects are doing it.
Yeah. Oh, this looks so pretty on my desktop that only 20% of people ever see.
Oh, and by the way, I have a 42-inch desktop screen. I have 3 of them on my desk, which is like true. I have these huge screens. Like, of course it's going to look different.
Yeah, no, so
And
everyone has a hamburger menu on mobile, okay? Like, let's not get
exactly. And again, this is addressing consumer behavior, right? We're in multifamily, but this concept applies if you're shopping in Amazon. I mean, would you ever buy anything without either seeing it? Never, right? But even Amazon, the Amazon experience now is they have these 3D tools now where, you can spin it around. I love the one where you can actually put it on, you take a scan of your room and it shows you like how big exactly it is as it relates to your space. So those things are happening because that's what consumers expect. Like, if I'm buying something from Amazon, I know they show like the size and, but it would be if I can physically see like what the, electric fan looks like on my floor, how hot it is, right? I think, that just nudges me to like click that add to cart button, and same thing here.
What you just say too, we're just being more transparent with our prospect. And so they're just automatically going to have more trust if we're willing to show them as much as we can. They don't feel like we're trying to hide anything, or they don't have to search for it. I mean, in today's world.
And Chris, you really nailed that piece. Just the psychology of the consumer, the renter, right? It's really about, really transparency, building trust, removing the uncertainty, and really just helping them visualize, where they're gonna live. Yeah, and really just, if you can put themselves literally inside that apartment and where they can walk around, they can see, what is the relation, where is the bathroom in relation to the living room or the bedroom in relation, the relationship of spaces, right? And they can walk through virtually through those space. I think it just removes a lot of the ambiguity of, this is one of their biggest expense items, is rent. And then you want to be able to make sure that, the place you're going to move into is, what you can see yourself living there, right?
Yeah, I love it. Izzy, this has been great so far. We've talked about unit content. We just take it maybe a little bit higher up to the 7,000 foot level. I'd really like to see or hear what you think is next for our industry. How do we mix maybe AI with your video technology? Do we go back to furniture planners because the technology is better? And to your point, you can be in the unit level and actually put a bed in there or something. I'm just brainstorming off the top, but what's next for us as marketers? Let's say Ann's already doing it. I'm going to jump on this unit level stuff for sure. Yeah. What's next? What are we looking for in the industry? What tech is next? Help us understand that. You've always been on top of it.
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of it is happening and will continue to happen. AI is obviously here now. Ann and I were at a conference, last week, and I had the privilege of actually introducing Ann in one of our sessions. And I mean, the dominant theme of that conference is AI, marketing in the AI era. So I think the capture process will be a lot easier with AI. The quality of the content, I think, will improve because of AI. The workflow will be simpler because of AI. Um, there's going to be a lot of personalization that's going to happen, because of AI. We've already seen, integrations happening with, where for us, we can feed our, unit level content or property, level content to interactive sitemaps like Ingrain, for example, right? And again, that enhances um, the renter experience when they can see a map and click on a unit and then takes them inside the unit, right, for a virtual tour. So that those things are happening now. I think there's going to be a lot more integrations that's going to happen in the future. And then I talked about this, last week, where I think a lot of those walls are really starting to come down in terms of, uh, you know, being able to put your content that you paid for as a client, as a customer, to your marketing channels, right? I think that's very important. That's very important to us at LCP, that, that we create this content for you, but that you're able to use it in as many marketing channels as you'd like to, right? And you should, right? That's content that you paid for. And so I think my hope is like the days of like, companies like closing it up because of whatever reason, will go away, and then it just becomes an open system for all, where, I have content. These are all my marketing channels that I should be able to syndicate this in all of these marketing channels without really much of a lift on the client side, right? We're all busy. We're all doing a lot of things, and we can alleviate that piece of like, okay, you have this content, we'll just distribute it to your market. Just tell us what marketing channels you're in, and we'll just push it, push it, push it, push it. I think those walls are starting to come down now, and I'm really, we've been around in the industry for a while, and I know those walls were very rigid for a long time, where you can't, it's hard to even, integrate from one system to another, right? I think those walls are starting to come down, and I think it's great for the industry that that's happening.
Good for the industry, but you know who it's actually good for? Our customers.
Exactly. Yeah.
I mean, at the end of the day, like, to wall this up and make it hard for them and have information get broken, or, I mean, we've talked about this at nauseum on the pod of how hard it is to actually audit. And we have to do it all the time, and there's always something. And a lot of times it's nothing that we did, it's somebody else did it. But I mean, doesn't that just make it easier for our consumers to make a purchase decision? We're all in this together, providing housing at the end of the day. Whether they go with Ann's community or my community, we should make it easy for that person to make that choice.
Absolutely. I still remember the days when, I'm paying LCP Media to create this content for me, and then I'm paying my listing sites, for my property listings. And every single month I have to grab the tours from LCP, and then I have to give it to every single one of my reps and say, can you put this in my listings, right? And I have to do that for every single source, every single month, to the point where I'm like, why am I doing this? I pay you and I'm paying you. Why can't you guys talk to each other? Right?
Yeah.
100%.
And that's happening now, which is a good thing.
Oh, amazing.
Well, Izzy, thank you. We're so excited that we got to talk to you. Like we joked about before, this was Chris's best day, but we're so grateful for what you've done for the industry, what you and LCP and Yardi are doing for the industry now. And any words of wisdom, any last thoughts before we say goodbye?
Well, one, I'm really, really grateful to be here. We thank you to both of you. I really recognize and I appreciate, I just did a post the other day about Marsha Bollinger, for example, and her contribution to the multifamily, what used to be called Social Media Summit, now Strategic Marketing Summit. And I don't think many people remember that she was the one who started that event, right? But I really have a strong appreciation for folks like you, Ann, and you, Chris, who's taking the time, to do these things, right? To educate us, to educate the industry, to help with, folks in our industry. I know a lot of people are doing that, but I think it's not appreciated as much. But these are the things I really do appreciate it when I see people doing things that that's really kind of not part of their job per se, but still doing it for the larger cause, so to speak, right? And so my last words would be thank you to both of you for doing this. Please continue to do this. Anything I can help with, for both of you and for the larger industry, I'd be delighted to. But yeah, continue doing what you're doing, guys, because this is exactly what our industry needs. Like, we just have to continue talking about things, learning about things, sharing things, and as that's the beauty of our industry, right? We might be competitors, we might be competing against each other, you're on that side and I'm on this side, or you're vice versa, you'll never know. But at the end of the day, it's a people industry, right? I always tell folks it's a big industry, but it's also a small industry where everybody knows everybody, and it's such a unique industry in a lot of ways, right? I'm sure we've all worked in. I used to work at National Geographic before I got the multifamily, and it's not this.
You could have led with that, Izzy.
Like, you're literally just finding out about this at like the 11th hour. Chris, we got to do our intros better. Like, well, you like one fun fact, Izzy, that's what you did for me. We should have done that. One fun fact.
Yeah.
No, but thank you so much. I mean, I think you're right. I think the conversations that we have kind of with each other are just, I mean, that was the whole purpose that we started the podcast, was to allow the conversations that Chris and I were having that helped both of us so much to expand to a larger audience, in the hopes that we could also help other people, through their triumphs and struggles with multifamily marketing. So thank you for being a part of it. We appreciate it. I know our audience appreciates your offer to help out. And it's true, by the way, Izzy's very generous. So he will. That is true. Get in touch with him. But Izzy, thank you so much. Thank you to Chris, of course, Carlos, our producer. Thank you to Flamingo, our sponsor. And until next time, this has been the Apartment Department.